I believe we already have people here. And before I get into introducing our amazing guest speaker this month, my name is Aaron Jones. I'm a carpenter and a builder on Grand Manan Island in New Brunswick, Canada. And tonight, because I'm still a little under the weather, I am drinking a sparkling lemon water. So I think it's only fair that I'm just going to go over to my closest neighbor, Lori, and maybe you can introduce yourself, and we'll get this show going.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Lori. I am based in Halifax, so just over my shoulder here. Just there's Aaron and there's me on the East Coast. Um, I am, uh, well, I wear a few hats actually, but I own a company that is called Habit Studio, and we design passive house new builds and deep retrofits. And I'm also a senior advisor at the Recover Initiative, where we advocate for deep retrofits, and we have been um, launching some new services and programs to support building owners and getting deep retrofit projects off the ground. So that's what I'm up to. And I don't know if you guys can see, this is in honor of the hockey game later tonight. This is my hockey team's. I actually play hockey, and everyone on my team has a cup that says classy till the puck drops. And it's got tea in it. Nothing fancy. I'm also like fighting a tiny little bug, like I think half of the East Coast is, and probably the whole rest of the country. Um, yeah, so excited to hear from our guest Angela, but first hand it over to Justin.
Hello, everyone. Justin from Saskatchewan. I'm a high performance builder and renovator. And just excited for our guest, Angela. Youth education and getting youth into the trades is huge for me. And I've had so much coffee today. So I am just crushing a bunch of water from this awesome Build Show Live water cooler that we got from the very first Build Show Live this past fall.
Well, that's awesome, everyone. Welcome to BS&BEER Canada. I would love to introduce our guest, Angela. I first had the opportunity to meet her this past year at BS&BEER Canada's first Building Science Symposium in Toronto. And well, we've just been thrilled with everything she's been doing ever since. So, Angela, please tell us a little bit more about Honor the Work.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you all tonight. So my name is Angela Coldwell, and I am the founder of Honor the Work. And the whole idea behind it was really between my husband and myself and a friend of ours, we were looking at how we could positively impact and change the narrative about skilled trades. And when we looked at the research, it showed that we really had to start in elementary school. So as a result, I was a high school chemistry and physics teacher and took a pause to be a mom. And now our kids are grade 6 and grade 4. And so a few years ago, decided my husband and I that we were going to proceed and create a nonprofit and now charity that would actually advocate for skilled trades. And except not in the typical market, which tends to be in high school or maybe junior high, but in specifically grades 1 to 6. And so as a result, in addition to our website, which we created as a centralized hub of resources for skilled trades and apprenticeship across Canada, and our social media, we also now have a grades 1 to 6 program in both Alberta and Ontario, where it directly ties in hands-on activities with materials and books that directly tie to the curriculum. And so it's been successful because teachers really want to present diverse careers, but they haven't really had the means to do so. They don't necessarily have that knowledge about different careers or the materials, or didn't even know the books existed. And so as a result, it has been a really great opportunity to fill that gap and to have great sponsors like you all, to be able to then be able to help support this and getting this to the classroom. And so we just scaled into Alberta this year, and then now looking to expand into BC later on this year. And so
That I was just going to say that is awesome news, and hopefully, maybe we'll be able to run into you somehow in BC later this year.
that would be
Maybe.
fantastic. That would be really great. I'd love that. And yeah, so really, what I can do is I can just kind of share a little bit about why elementary school, because most commonly the question is why, like why would we start in elementary school, and what is that idea behind there? Because normally advocacy starts in high school, and so the really interesting thing is that when it actually comes to children and who they want to become, it actually starts very young. So gender biases actually occur between ages 5 and 7. So it means if girls don't see other females who are in roles of carpenters or glazers or millwrights or electricians, they don't realize it's for them. And likewise, young boys don't realize that if they don't see, for example, male nurses, they don't realize that's a role that they can take on. And so, really catching kids young is really essential. And then also, by the time girls are about age 8, the confidence in STEM drops. And ultimately, we know if you're in the industry that skilled trades careers are STEM careers without question. And more correctly, they're STEAM careers. They're science, technology, engineering, art, math. And so it's an integration of all of these where you're using your head and your hands simultaneously. And so we really want kids to realize that these careers, when you're talking about STEM careers or STEAM careers, we want them to realize that these careers, if you enjoy building with Lego and Connects, this is a really incredible opportunity for you to have community impact, to be able to be part of the climate change solution, to be able to be building something that's going to be used by the community for years to come. And so they're very, very incredible careers to be part of, and it's really a stepping stone to whatever you want to do. Many of you, are your own business owners, and so you started in a trade, you did your apprenticeship, and now you've gone in your own direction. And I think that's the other thing that's really important for kids and teachers and parents to know too. Erin, you're talking about the fact that you just finished teaching, for example, and so you're mentoring the next generation and teaching your skills. So it's just so important for the kids to realize this, as well as the teachers and the parents that are influencing this. And then ultimately, grades 5 and 6 is actually when kids and their parents are most engaged in career exploration. And so this kind of shocks a lot of people because we always think about careers courses in grade 9. And by that point in time, kids have often made up their mind about what they don't want to do. And the biases of society have sunk in. And unfortunately, while it is starting to change, we still have those stigmas that are associated with skilled trades careers and construction. And so it's really important then to catch kids young. And, I know a lot of us know people in the industry that have gone into the trades kind of at 26 to 29, and that's the average starting time for an apprentice in Canada. And it's kind of wild to think about it. I was a high school chem and physics teacher, so my kids were graduating at 17 and 18. So to think there's a full decade that passes before some people find what their true calling is really something that we really have to work to fix. And so as a result, we know a lot of people, especially speaking with people in their 20s, they really liked building when they were young, but their parents were not supportive of it. And when they wanted to have that conversation about what they want to become, a lot of parents said, no, there's kind of 4 careers we're going to say yes to: business, law, engineering, or medicine. And that was about it. And so, we tell a story about a young woman named Kieran, and she really is a real lady. We've changed the name, but she's really also a compilation of so many stories we've heard of kids who wanted to go and work with their hands, but learned very young from their parents that it was not acceptable. And so go on to do a college or university program and really feel depressed and completely unhappy. Some finish, some don't, but by the time they get into the workforce, they're just not happy with that career choice. And then more often than not, it's a family member or a pre-apprenticeship program they happen to come across, and that's how they actually end up ending in the trades. It's through someone saying, you know what, have you thought about going into this pre-apprenticeship program? It's free, it's local, they're accepting people. And so with Kieran, that's exactly what happened to her. She realized that after finishing her Bachelor of Science degree, it was not what she really wanted to do, but she didn't know what her next step was until she walked by a poster one day, and it was a pre-apprenticeship program with a picture of a carpenter on it. And it was a female carpenter. And all of a sudden, it was like all of those emotions and feelings of joy that she had as a child building with Connects and Lego came back to her. And very hesitantly, after walking by this poster time and time again, she finally decided to make the call, and there was a spot for her. And the end result now is that she has graduated. She's a journey person. She is now, owns her own home, owns her own truck, and now she's looking at starting her own company. And the whole idea here behind this is when we talk to teachers about this, they often say, I could think of 5 or 6 kids in my class right now that this would fit in terms of the way that they learn. And so we really have to look at these kids in our classrooms and say, you know what, some kids learn really well, and they still are learning with pencil and paper. But some kids maybe are not the kids that show they're learning that way. They're super smart, but they need to be able to build or make. And if they could only communicate by talking through what they've built and explaining it, the teacher would see, oh my gosh, you really know what you're talking about. But we tend to have a prevalence as teachers to go to pencil and paper because we need to report for report cards. And the end result is in the process, we often, I think, have students that end up becoming increasingly disengaged and feel a lack of belonging because they don't think that they fit in the educational system. And this isn't just kids, for example, who don't do well on pencil and paper. These could be kids that are, do great on exams and assessments, but they just naturally have a desire to build. But often they're just not able to explore that in a more meaningful way going through school because perhaps neither of their parents have any tools in the house. And so the whole idea is that if we can let kids in grades 1 to 6 learn about careers while they're teaching the curriculum. So if we're talking about, for example, pattern making, and we start to talk about a tiler, or we're talking about polygon shapes and we give them a hammer and nails, and they're actually able to do art using hammer, nails, wood and string into string art. All of a sudden, we're starting to bring these careers to the kids, but in a way that's also directly tying into their curriculum. And the end result is that our goal is to help to change the numbers. For example, nationally, we know that we're going to lose 700,000 people from the industry by 2028. That's RBC's numbers. We're originally from Alberta, and so I'll kind of speak to Alberta and now Ontario numbers where we live. But in the GTA alone, 22% of the labor force is going to be retiring by 2033, and in Alberta, it's the same. It's about 20%. And so if we want to change that average starting apprentice age, which I give as 27, but again, somewhere between 26 and 29 nationwide, we really do have to do something much earlier on, like 2 decades earlier when they're starting school in grades 1 and 2, and start exposing them to diverse careers. And then by doing so, we also re-educate the teachers about what these careers look like. And then ultimately the excitement of getting to hands-on activities trickles home to the kids and the parents hear about it. And so, a lot of teachers will say, myself included, you go K to 12, then you get your education degree and you go back to the classroom and start teaching. And if it wasn't for the fact I had a spouse in the industry who, very early on changed my perception, then I probably would hold on to those ideas too. And it's not intentional. It's just an innocent blind spot because we just don't know about all these careers that exist because we have not experienced it. And most of the people in our family don't go into these roles. And so, right now we got 1 in 5 jobs in Ontario that are in the trades. In Calgary, 1 in 4 job vacancies right now are in the trades. And so we know we've got a huge labor shortage, and yet we've got kids in the Alpha and Gen Z bracket that want to give back to their community, be part of something bigger, have work-life balance, have the opportunity to be entrepreneurial. And so all of a sudden, it aligns with skilled trades and it starts to tick a lot of boxes that are similar. And then the other part of it is we have increasing diversity. And we know that on our job sites, we only have about 5% of women on the tools. In the residential sector, it's a little bit higher. In Ontario, it's said to be 7%. But we certainly also have a lot of diverse cultures as well, too. And so making sure that we have representation is so important. And so that's why when we look at the books, for example, and this is a sampling of some of the books that come with our program, where we've aligned these books to lessons, the whole idea is making sure that kids see themselves represented. So represented in terms of culture, in terms of gender, in terms of role, and so that they realize these are roles for them. So again, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so it's really important that these kids are able to say, hey, I've never seen myself represented in a book before. And we've known that talking with teachers, both in Alberta and in Ontario. That book in the middle, A Sky Blue Bench, is about an Afghan girl who loses her leg, cannot sit comfortably in the classroom because she stepped on a landmine. And so now she goes to the local carpenter. He teaches her how to build a bench. And now she can sit comfortably. And then all the girls in her all-girl classroom want to learn how to build a bench. So not only is it beautiful because it's a beautiful story and it's culturally diverse, but we also had a teacher say to us that she actually had a student in the class, and the student, she had lost a leg and she had never seen herself represented before. And so this was the first time she saw that. And so now realizing that, hold on a second, like I didn't know that I could have a career doing something with my hands and working. And in Peterborough, as a quick example, they actually have a welding program for individuals who are in wheelchairs. And so really looking at that whole spectrum of how do we make sure everybody can have a spot in this industry if that's what they would like to do and proceed with. So ultimately, the long story short is if you can align and curriculum with hands-on activities and teaching kids about literacy and numeracy, then the end result is we really can help kids better understand how what they're learning in school is actually used in the real world. And that's really important because we want to be kids the whole question, why am I learning this? And we want them to realize that these skills are transferable. So if you learn, for example, to use a hammer, well, what else can you do with your hands? And we want to be practical. And then we also want kids to realize as well, too, and teachers that, these are careers that are not only, financially rewarding, but they're also very much intellectually stimulating. And they use all of the most important skills that we talk about nowadays in terms of employability, problem solving, evaluation, the ability to write. Programming is obviously increasingly important as we look at BIM systems or robotics or AI or VR coming into construction sites more and more. And so the whole idea is that if we start to show teachers in particular that these key skills are actually used in construction. So it's not just hammers and hard hats, but there's an entire set of skills that we just don't see when you're driving by a job site. Then all of a sudden teachers start to say, oh my goodness, like these are incredible careers. I never thought of them this way. And we were just with a group of teachers yesterday in Toronto and doing a workshop. And it's amazing how in one day, by giving teachers the experience to be at a college, for example, and do hands-on activities and talk to them about this, the same presentation I gave to them, it's amazing how all of a sudden they're like, I'm going to go back and start talking about these careers with my students. We're not just going to talk about community helpers anymore as nurses and doctors and paramedics and police officers, which are all incredibly important. But I never thought about the people who actually build my house or rec center or the streets we are driving on. I never thought of them as community helpers, and I've never mentioned them. And now I'm going to start to explicitly talk about that. So ultimately, as I mentioned, that goal is to change perceptions. And looking at the broader ecosystem of the AEC space, only 20% of females or female identifying individuals are engineers. The goal by Engineers Canada is 30% by 2030, the 30 by 30 goal. And so, we only have 5 years left to get that 10% number up. We're seeing more women in engineering, but still in civil classes, there's still probably many, many fewer females than maybe in other types of engineering. And so again, we need to have that representation, and it starts young. So you know this well, green jobs are trades jobs. So the huge energy transition we're going through, the retrofits, everything that's occurring is going to require a skilled labor force. And teachers often don't think about that either. And again, it's just an innocent blind spot from the time we mine to transport to manufacture to installation. In this case, it's solar panels to upkeep, all the power lines. That's a full labor force that we're talking about. And so a lot of times I think people think about, they're going to have an EV and charge it, but they don't think about maybe past the electrician that's going to come and install that charging system in their home. So it's again, just exposing teachers who then will expose kids. And again, it's not just the construction sector. This is for manufacturing. We know that the green energy transition is going to affect everybody, but also the skilled trades labor shortage is also affecting everybody. And we're all in a competition, ultimately, different sectors for the same skill sets and people. So being able to showcase that these are high demand careers, not just now, but from now until 2050, the $2 trillion price tag that RBC has pegged the clean energy transition cost in Canada, this is multi-sector that we need to make sure that we're fulfilling the needs of. And then, of course, when it comes to all the things that we're going to need as we're building new homes, we're going to need to have all of the, electrical engineers on site as well too. But also as you go down that list of where we're going to need people, 19% electrical technologists and technicians, down there again at 16% electrical power line workers. We can't have new residential communities and meet the affordable housing crisis unless we have all the infrastructure that goes along with it. And that requires, again, that full scale of labor force. So I think now, as I just kind of come to the end of presenting these values, what I think teachers really start to resonate with, and I think the adults who are not in the industry, so maybe those who are white collar, who maybe don't have anybody in the family that does a trade and their children might be the first one to go on this route. When we talk about the affordability crisis and we talk about the housing crisis, people can relate to that 1.5 million homes in Ontario or 3.5 million homes nationally that we need to reach affordability by 2030. Then you start to talk about the rec centers and the houses and the schools that are literally bursting because there's not enough space. And then I think it starts to make more sense to parents because all of a sudden it's like, this relates to me. I couldn't get my reno done because I couldn't find a tradesperson, or the plumber cost me $400 just to come and check out my pipe that was, blocked. When we make it personal to parents and teachers, then it all of a sudden I think becomes a lot more impactful because they can relate it to their own life. And then, the last part of it is giving them the numbers. These are Build Force data numbers. This happens to be for the GTA because I was just presenting to Toronto teachers yesterday, but giving them what those numbers look like. Guidance counselors, we talk about a lot in terms of the fact that guidance counselors need to be able to talk to their students about skilled trades careers. But while that is incredibly important and it's definitely needed, I had more time in a classroom with my physics and chemistry students than a guidance counselor who has a 1 to 300 or 1 to 400 ratio with one guidance counselor to 300 students in a school. And it's really difficult as well, too, because they don't get workforce data. So they don't know when they're here in the news, skilled trades are high demand. They're actually not sure which skilled trades are needed. So giving them this kind of data really does help them because otherwise they don't know actually what to recommend. And they also don't know how to cold call. So they don't know who to reach out to. So who's hiring? In what sectors? How do I make those connections? And so it's unfortunate that education and industry really rely on each other, but they're very much siloed and they don't talk to each other. And so that's really what we're trying to bridge the gap. So not only with our program for 1 to 6 do we have, the turnkey kits with lessons and hands-on materials and books, but I'm also working directly with colleges. We do free events like yesterday to do workshops so that we can actually present this to teachers. And there were some guidance counselors too. And then next month, I'm talking to Toronto Catholic guidance counselors who've asked me specifically to bring workforce data to them and talk about, well, how do you get students into the workforce? Because again, as a teacher who has a spouse in construction and now kind of bridges those two worlds, we're finding that there are some gaps that are actually very easily fixed, but they are major gaps that are really hindering more people from proceeding into these careers. And then ultimately, the other part of it is teachers are not aware of the difference between residential and ICI. So, we're in Ontario right now. We moved from Alberta. My parents live in Calgary, where the housing cycle is just booming. There's been more housing starts in Alberta than anywhere else in anywhere else in Canada, pardon me. And so there, the residential sector is taking off, whereas here in Ontario, it's a lot slower, especially with all the condos. And so it's a really, obviously across the country, it's going to vary, but also, between the ICI and residential sector. And again, teachers aren't familiar with those two different sectors or the way that they work, or how you really kind of get into one sector versus the other, and the difference between compulsory and voluntary trades. There's a lot of parts of it that make it a little more complicated, in addition to just understanding the whole apprenticeship process, which is very much different than going into college or university. So these are some of the things that we can really start to bridge the gap with when we talk to teachers. And then I'll just finalize it by the other part of it is that whole innovation piece. Teachers aren't aware of all the neat things that are occurring. So, when I went to your symposium last year, I thought it was just so fascinating. My husband and I have built our own house with our own hands. We're planning to build a new house, and being him in the construction industry, he's an engineer by training, but he worked for a GC for more than 20 years. All the things you were talking about, the zip systems and so on, that's all what he's about too, and having geothermal and having, all the new innovation. A lot of people don't know about those things, especially if you're not somebody from the construction industry. So we have a friend who's building a new house just down our street, and they've been trying to figure out, all the details. They did everything from doing like the geotechnical survey to, like what kind of materials to be using in their house. This is all new to them. And, the wife is an optometrist, and he works for a research institute. Very clever people, but they just don't know those details. The other part that people don't know is the whole idea of modular and how modular is taking off. So this happens to be Faro. It's a company outside of Hamilton and Stony Creek, and they're making all sorts of modular things. This is a modular classroom, but they're doing modular hospital units. They're potentially going to work with the military. And so this whole idea that modular, what does it look like? This whole idea of you have a kit of parts, just like say Connects, and you can build all these things with it. It's efficient, it's inside. They have about 20% of their workforce female because they can address a lot of the things that sometimes are barriers for females, such as having, regular time slots because they're on 2 shifts. So they know, if you're a mom that has to drop off your kids and pick them up, when you can be to work and coming back from work. They have bathrooms on site, so you don't have to be driving to the nearest Tim Hortons. So it's really interesting to be able to show teachers this, but also to show them as well, just, spot the dog. So they've got lots of kids in their class liking Roblox and Minecraft. And so showing them that, there's a spot for your kiddos in the industry. So as an architectural technologist, for example, perhaps a programmer who's going to be, taking that data that Spot the Dog is getting, for example, autonomously, and you're going to work in the IT sector, or the AR and VR components. And a lot of times teachers aren't aware of the fact that, drones or using a joystick to use maybe heavy duty equipment even off-site somewhere remotely. These are all things that are possible. And so kids' eyes and parents' eyes light up when you start to talk about the fact that there's these hybrid careers now, that you can learn to be a welder, but you also are going to learn to program, or you can learn to be, a millwright, but you also are going to learn to program. And so colleges like Conestoga, for example, and George Brown, they offer these amazing programs, and a lot of times parents aren't aware of them, and they're not realizing that there's this intersection between what their kid likes to do as a hobby and an actual career path. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is just show that there are three equitable forms of post-secondary: college, apprenticeship, and university, and that they're all equal, but you have to have a child has to choose based on what their talents and strengths and interests lie, and that there's not one that's better than another. The stigma never should have existed, but it's been around for about 60 years since the space race. And if we can undo that by showing that these careers are, these are people that think with their head in their hands, which really, if I come from a world of academia where, we learned at university to become teachers. Ultimately, I look at my skill set and I look at someone who's a carpenter on a job site, and they're making something out of nothing, a house out of raw materials. I make stuff out of, lesson plans and what have you, but the skill set that's needed to become a skilled tradesperson is just remarkable. And we just undervalue it so much. And it should be right up there with every other career path, most certainly equitable to academia, if not more so. And so we just want people to realize there's three equal paths, and choose based on what your child's strengths are, and not based on what the stigma or societal biases are or expectations are, which are to go to college and university. So, and parents, I guess the last swing factor is really when you talk to them about the difference of where their child will be after 4 years. So 4 years on the left is if you, for example, have been in the trades and you've been earning, getting a network, having benefits, versus being in a college program where you don't have a work placement term, and so you don't have any of those things. You haven't been making money. You don't necessarily have the network. Parents really start to say, "Oh my gosh," teachers really do as well too. I had no idea how much further ahead my child could be. And if they started in an apprenticeship program in grade 11, for example, and they were done at 21, I had no idea that by the time they were in their mid-20s, they'd be able to own their own home, and they would be able to start their own business if they wanted to, and have their own vehicle. And so a very different perspective as well too, in terms of financially where you can be at. And then, you're in your early 20s. So you really have your whole life ahead of you. And then that leads ultimately to the idea of where you can take it. And again, a lot of people just think, they hear people about the backbreaking labor. My brother-in-law is a carpenter, and he's getting closer to 40. And so he's looking at transitioning into more of a management position. He's been on the tools for 20 years. But, the opportunities are huge. And a lot of people don't realize that if you want to stay on the tools, you can. But you also have like a whole plethora of career possibilities that you can go into. And so it's just really painting the picture and filling those gaps in. And so I'll end it here. But that's really what the goal is. The goal is to change the narrative on the website. Being a teacher, I designed the website as though you never knew anything about the trades. And so you didn't know where to start. So where are you going to find financial support? Where will you find free pre-apprenticeship programs? Where will you be able to find, videos that are showcasing different careers? That was really what the website was meant to be, kind of that hub, and nationally. And then ultimately the social media campaign was meant to be showcasing individuals and statistics to help transform the ideas for those who aren't in the industry. So parents and teachers and guidance counselors, and then highlight the amazing people that are in the industry and what they're doing. And then ultimately the goal was to reach elementary teachers, because that's that sweet spot. If we can catch kids by the time they get to grade 6, then the idea is that in junior high, if they can take a technology or CTF program, so a construction program or something that they're working with their hands, they at least have had 6 years of information. They understand, well, what is a millwright or a glazer? Often these careers that are lesser known, because most people know plumber, electrician, carpenter, but they don't necessarily know other careers beyond that. And then the goal then is, if they are informed grades 1 to 6, then by the time they get into junior high and then into high school, we've planted the seed of what they might be interested in. And they're that much more apt to go and say, I would like to take a co-op or an apprenticeship term, and then find out what this is all about. And then ultimately it is a long play, but our hope is then by the time, they're in their, late teens going into their 20s, they've been in an apprenticeship program, and we start to have not only the stigma not there, but we start to be able to fulfill those numbers that we're going going to need to fill the workforce, which regardless of how we look at it, we've got a huge lack of individuals. Even if we can get all the people that we're hoping to into the trades, we're still going to have a, tens of thousands shortage in most provinces across the country. So at least we're trying to change the narrative so that it becomes just a pathway that's, without a blink of an eye. I'm an electrician. Fantastic. I'm a nurse. Awesome. Like there's just no kind of stigma associated with it. And that's the end goal for us. And then change that amongst teachers. Because if we change one teacher, they'll be advocates and champions for it. And then every year, not only will they champion it with their own students, but they'll champion it with other teachers too. And you create kind of a grassroots movement amongst teachers. And that's really the ultimate goal. So I'll stop sharing there.
That's amazing, Angela. Thank you. And I think you highlighted a lot of really important points. And from my own personal experience, a lot of times the reason that we don't have, many people getting into the trades is just the barrier to entry. They don't know anybody. They don't know where to start. Their guidance counselor, their teacher, whatever the case may be, doesn't know how to get them into the Red Seal program, match them with an employer that would be willing to apprentice them. So I think this is amazing. And if you can get this started in elementary school, we are going to be so much better off in the next few decades.
Well, it's interesting because, when we first started this idea, it was like January of 2020. It was literally like, 8 weeks before the pandemic. And it was myself, my husband, and a good friend of ours, Jen Hancock, who works for Shandos Construction. And she had just come back from a career fair at the university level. And she was really exasperated because she had been talking with students who were business students or marketing students, and they had completely overlooked the construction industry. Like all they thought of it was building. So she's like, no, but we need all these other roles. And it wasn't even on their radar. And a good friend of ours and our partner in Calgary is the Calgary Construction Association, and Tammy Amstis, who does the workforce strategies there. She was talking with one of her friends who's a programmer, and when he's looking to transition careers, she's like, come to construction. He's like, why would I come to construction? Like, she's like, no, like here's all the ways we need programmers, and again, not on the radar. So it's really interesting. It's such a rich career. I was with the land developer or the general contractor multiplex a few weeks ago, and was talking with their women's group, and the number of women who, again, talked about the fact they not lucked, but by chance got into their roles. So whether it was a construction estimator or a site superintendent or foreperson, they never knew these careers existed. And then now they've come into the construction industry, they left university, they had the right skill set to go into these jobs, and they're like, we're never going to leave. We love it. But again, it's just, unfortunately, construction has not done a fabulous job of advocating for itself and all the wonderful jobs that exist. And yet when people get in here, they fall in love with it. They see, they see the sense of community on a site. They see what they're building. They see the impact they have. They see that no 2 days are the same. I come from I'm a teacher. So I was kind of my own little person in my classroom and a little bit of an isolated island. But on a job site or in the construction industry, it's all about helping each other and sharing, right? Yeah, there's no problem that's too big. You can't figure it out and work together. And so, if more people knew that this was the philosophy, I can only imagine how much more appealing it would be. But unfortunately, it's about getting that messaging out, and it's about school visits and talking to classrooms and connecting with teachers. And it's like you said, it's also about employers taking on apprentices or relying them on a job shadow on a job site, in high school. Because ultimately, if you catch them in high school and you've got a great kind of family culture at your company, those kids are going to want to come and stay. And then they're not only going to want to stay and continue on their apprenticeship or program, they're going to bring their friends who have that like mind too. So you're actually catching not one kid, you're actually going to get a bunch of kids who are like this. And so, there's a lot of interesting, as we do our, work more with teachers and industry, there's a lot of ways that, we can really easily fix some of these barriers. Part of it is an employer wanting to take on a student and willing to take that chance on them and not looking at it as something that kid's going to move on and to look for a higher pay later on, but really creating that culture that the kid's going to want to stay. And then the other is, connecting educators to these different careers and these employers in the region and really guiding them to how they do that. Because I think that's one of the biggest things. Guidance counselors and even the apprenticeship recruiters don't necessarily know who to contact, and that's unfortunate.
No, that's there's just a whole pile of things that we've got to do a better job at doing. And we've had an amazing group of professionals in the industry, but they've been very quiet. You're not wrong. We are horrible at promoting ourselves, and so having someone like you to champion the cause, I think, has gone a long ways, or definitely going to help out furthering getting people into the trades.
Yeah, I was just thinking, so, I'm involved in projects where we do have um, capacity building objectives in our work, and so we have done a couple of pilot programs here in Nova Scotia to do job shadowing with African Nova Scotian youth in um, construction industry jobs. But these are teenagers, and really we do have to go back before that. And it was really interesting talking to them, because they were, they've already been kind of coached already that they should be looking for to go to university, not into trades. Like there's a very, like, since kind of like the 80s, we've just had this movement to push people into higher levels of education where, you know, we've just shot ourselves in the foot in terms of having a construction industry. And so, like, you said that over the next 8 years or something like that, or maybe it was even like shorter period of time, maybe 5 years, that we are going to lose 70,000 people or 700,000 people because of retirement. But we're we're starting at something like well over 120,000 that are missing from the industry right now. So where are we going to find them? Like, we're going to find them with young people. We have to, and we also have to be looking at girls and young women and at equity deserving communities, because that's who's not there. Like, like 85 to 95%, depending on where you are, of the industry is men, and mostly they're white men. So yeah, it's just like phenomenal. And like, how do you go coast to coast?
Well, that's it, and that's that's the interesting thing. So as we're every province has its own curriculum, and it has its own school curriculum, and then it has its own educational philosophy. So being from Alberta,
Yeah.
going back to Alberta, it was somewhat easier because of the fact that I know the educational philosophy there as well. But they're getting brand new curriculum last year and this year and then next year. So the other part of it is, teachers do feel like they're drowning right now because there's so many initiatives. So not only are we
Mhm.
still facing that COVID kind of the ripple effects of that? So the kids' reading levels, their numeracy, their ability to like self-regulate, their manners, all those things are obviously it's kind of crazy. But then when you think about a lot of these kids who are in elementary school, they were in kindergarten or grade 1, grade 2, and there's always, I think there's that expression, everything I needed to know in life I learned in kindergarten. These kids were not in school necessarily during those years, so they are missing some of those key pieces, their social skills, right? Then you look at the high school kids, they're also missing some of these things. They're looking at their phone, they don't necessarily know how to talk to somebody else, right? There's you hear it from the high school students or the high school teachers as well too. So it really is this idea that it does take some time, but in Ontario, we started here because we live here now, and made the curriculum match for all the lessons here for grades 1 to 6. Then did the same thing in Alberta. I'm doing the same thing in BC, and then as we are going through the process, we're picking up the help along the way as well too. So in Calgary Catholic School District, they're Indigenous as well as their school consultants actually helped us. They went through all the lesson plans after they were made, and then added additional Indigenous components in and made sure we hadn't missed anything for the
Amazing.
curriculum. And so now in BC, we're working with this really neat lady. She's a welder, so she's a Red Seal welder, but she also has an education degree and she works in curriculum. Like, what a lucky match we have there. And so she's really helping me as well to match not only the curriculum but understand the educational philosophy in BC so that the program matches what teachers expect there as well too. And so it is a process, but ultimately, she's helping us for free, just like Calgary Catholic did. And the whole idea is that it falls kind of under her umbrella, but these are all passion projects for all of us. We'd like to see some real change, and so how do we go about doing it. So it does take a little bit of time to scale across the country, but you also want to make sure you're doing it in a way that's going to resonate with teachers so that they actually want to do it. So not only do the lessons have to be, simple enough and easy enough that they can look at it in the morning and then do it in the afternoon, but the materials have to be there and all the links to, the innovation, the career videos and all those things. So literally like when they open it up on a digital copy, it's sitting there and all they have to do is just click and go through it and then be able to engage their kids with the hands-on component. And that's the part that's kind of missing for a lot of teachers. They're just not sure necessarily how to bring these kind of careers to the classroom or where the resources are. And they don't necessarily know, like, for example, for a bricklayer, what kind of activity do I do for that, right? And so this is where if we can help to fill those gaps, then it makes it not only fun for the teacher, but fun for the students and engaging. And it ties in with, everything from fractions to measurement, right? All these things that tie into the lesson. So you're learning, but you're doing it in a way that naturally fits the way a kid learns, which is through play. And so ultimately they'll learn faster that way and they'll retain it a lot better because they'll remember it better because it's, again, the brain body connection. They're doing both things at the same time, building and thinking, but then they're collaborating and doing all those other things. So long story short, it's just one of those things where if we just continue to find the right partners and be able to continue to move across the country, that's the ultimate goal, to be able to have this in every province, and be able to support teachers through industry ultimately, so that schools who don't have the funding really to be able to do things like this, the construction industry, the general contractors, the subtrades, and so on, there's a role to be able to give back. And then not only do they give back through kits, but then they all of a sudden create a relationship with a school they maybe didn't have before. And then that's a guest speaker to the classroom. So it really comes full circle that they become integrated into the school as part of the greater community, which is really key.
That's awesome. Before we open the floor for questions, I've got two more questions for you, Angela. I heard a rumor that you might be using this book as well now too.
So we were so fortunate. So it would be BS&BEER as well as Sean. You were all so generous in giving us these books. So these have actually made their way out to Alberta teachers and Ontario teachers. And I actually was going back and forth actually with the author and his sister. And his sister has a PhD in education, which is remarkable. And they wrote the book together and kind of exploring what this could look like, especially in the elementary, like kindergarten, grade 1. So stay tuned. It's kind of a combination. We're kind of talking about it right now, what this looks like, and I've given this out to some teachers, and so looking to be able to incorporate this. But the feedback's been so great. When they open it up, teachers are like, "This is so great." They really enjoy it. So stay tuned as to how it will get integrated going forward.
That's awesome. So my second question is, what is the charitable status of Honor the Work? And if somebody wanted to help, how can they help out?
Great question. So we received charitable status from CRA last year, so we're really excited by that. And so, if you want to help out, the easiest way is just to email me. It's angela@honorthework.ca, or you can just go through the contact page. The email takes you directly to me. So, and then we can start a conversation about what that looks like and how you'd want those funds to be used. And then from there, then it just increases our ability to have impact and support schools and programming that we're offering and growing.
That is awesome. I don't know if we have any questions, but if we do, now's the time that we should open the floor.
I do have one for Angela. I'm just wondering, like, on a local level, to try to plant the seed in some of our local elementary schools and stuff. What is the best way to go about that, and perhaps start, building a relationship between them and you, Angela?
I think that probably one of the things teachers always like books. So I think, being able to have like a set of books that you can donate to the school, I think is really great. And it doesn't have to be all 17 or 18 of them. Just having, a subset of books, I think is a great starter. And then I think also just being able to say, like for yourself, for example, I work in the community and I would be able to bring my truck by, for example, or be able to come in and talk to students about what I do, or, bring in my tool belt and what have you. Like, it just, I think offering the ability to connect, I think is really key as well. And then ultimately just, I think talking about the fact that there is a turnkey program that has been created and it's in other provinces now, but is this something that you would want? And in every province we've spoken to, it's always the same ask. It's always like, please match it to the curriculum, please give us the lesson plan with all the links, all the student handouts, all the building materials, all the books. And that's kind of what sells the program. And that's, that's what teachers are looking for. So I just say that there's a program that exists, and if you're looking at exploring it, I can put you in contact with that person. But to start off immediately, really just being able to offer the ability to come to the school, bring your truck by, and even if there's a job site nearby as well too, is there a way that the kids could maybe not be on the job site, especially if they're younger, but just kind of proximity to it to be able to explain what's happening on the different components as well too.
Thank you.
All right, let's see if there is anybody in our audience this evening that would like to ask a question. I believe Mr. St. Amour is with us while he's driving, so I don't know if he's going to be able to chime in.
A special shout out though, thank you, Sean, for supporting those books. Teachers are really thrilled to get them.
Happy to help out the message. And again, Mark put a lot of effort in that book, and happy to get it in kids' hands and play with it because it's a pretty fully faceted book with what opportunities. So sorry that I'm late. Again, just managing my new role, but again, Angela, what you're doing is fantastic. So thanks so much for what you're doing. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
Well, if we don't have any further questions, oh, hey, right
Hey, can you hear
under
me?
the wire, right under the wire. Thank you, Connor.
Oh, great. Can you see me?
I can barely see you.
Yeah, you're very dark.
Yeah, I promise I'm here. I'm also on the road just between jobs, so I'm picking up my wife from the airport. So thanks for coming, Angela. It's really so for those of you who don't know me, I teach at a trade school in Toronto. It's George Brown College, and I did not come from taking skilled trades at school. I grew up with my dad being a builder, and was I thought was the way we all learned how to build was physically high school summers and when I come to meet my students now at trade school or college, most of them happen to choose our program because it was mentioned to them when they were 17, 18 by a guidance counselor, by someone at school or a parent, or they just didn't find that fit. And I'm curious, we have the same feeling that I'm almost starting too late. Our college has a lot of resources. We've got shops and labs and things. How can trade school colleges and professional apprenticeship delivery agents, which there are lots of, how can we support this kind of idea? So you mentioned this ideas to Justin, like what can theoretically well-structured trade school environments, what can we do to move younger?
That's a great question. And I will tell you, I love your trade school. So we've done 4 events with trade schools. The very first one was actually with this place where Connor teaches, so at George Brown. And so it is fantastic. I think that there's a huge untapped opportunity. So I would say that when it comes to technical colleges like yours at trade schools, most teachers have never been on a technical college campus. So that means that they have no idea what exists there. So what our program was actually, what we do with that part of the program was really actually inspired by your partnership with Tridel through the Bolt Foundation. So I happened to attend an event where it was a 1-day event. It was meant for, as you mentioned, Lori, those who are underrepresented. And so it was meant for a lot of students who are from the Black community in the GTA. And they went for a full day. Half of the day was spent on the job site at George Brown. The other half was actually on a job site for a condo project that Tridel was building. And I thought it was such a brilliant program. And I thought, oh my gosh, could we ever do this for teachers? And so at the time, the executive director there, I met her and she helped put me in contact with George Brown. And that's actually why we have the program. So I owe so much to your whole organization, Connor, at George Brown, because they were the first ones to take a chance on us and say yes. And so I would say that the whole idea is if we could do full day sessions for teachers. And really, this is what I can say exactly what it looks like. The first 15 minutes when they arrive at 9 o'clock to like 9:20, we do basically the same presentation I just did with you. And then from there, we do a tour of the campus. And then from there, we have a panel of industry professionals who talk about what their career path is and what they do. And then we do a quick lunch. It's normally like pizza, for example, and salad. And then the whole afternoon, the first hour and a half is spent in a skilled trades lab doing hands-on activities in the actual lab that the technical school has. And then the other part is doing activities that tie into the curriculum that teachers could use in the classroom. So for example, yesterday, all the teachers went home with PEX pipe and fittings so they could create plumbing systems with their students, for example. And the whole idea is that in that one day, we do it during an intersession week so that it's no cost to this campus. The volunteers or professors that have some time off because the fact their students are either studying for exams or there's nobody at the college at that time. And so the end result is that in one day we can bring 20 to 30 teachers in, and all of a sudden they've had an experience now which they can go back to the classroom. And that experience is really the game changer. It's like anything, it lights a spark in teachers as much as that kind of experience lights a spark in kids. And so it's a totally scalable model. Any place could do this. We could do this every technical college across the country and reach out to your local school district and say, we will do this on a PD day. So if it was on a professional development day for teachers, there would be no cost for subs. Or we'll do it on a day where, yes, you're going to have subs in, but then the district covers the sub cost. And then, the rest of the day is still pretty much being facilitated for free. And then somewhere in there, maybe we could, in some cases, we've paid for the lunch. Now the school districts have said, no, we'll pay for the lunch. And in other cases, you just get a sponsor who can pay for the lunch. And so, teachers love free food. It's very rare that they get a free lunch. So So, not only do they get to learn for the day, they get lunch, they get to collaborate with, and learn from industry professionals. To me, it is such a simple solution because nobody's really having to create anything new. And every campus gets to highlight what is special to their campus. So, at George Brown, the Castelloma campus, going to the plumbing lab or going to the welding shop and getting teachers to virtually weld, those things alone, like teachers, every time they virtually weld, they're like, I wish I would have known about this. I love welding. Like, why did I not know this? And so, just getting those kinds of real world activities into them and then hearing from people in the industry, there, right there, that if we could do that over and over and over again, year over year over year, it would be such a game changer. And then where it's also possible, and I'm going to speak to Alberta on this one, every February, Thursdays and Fridays for the whole month of February, the entire province, teachers have the Thursday and Friday where they have a convention and all the teachers come together. It is unique, I know, to Alberta. It does not occur in Ontario because school boards are too large, and I can't speak to the rest of the country. But, every school district has 2 days that month that they come together. Imagine if, again, we could have the skilled trades campuses come on site with, any hands-on activities. We were just in Calgary last week, and the CTF teachers there say there's really never anything for them to be able to go to a shop class kind of PD session for themselves. So imagine if we were to have, in Alberta, the NATE, for example, or the SATE or the George Brown equivalent going onto those campuses and being able to provide that for teachers. And I guess the last thing is that a lot of shop teachers aren't necessarily shop teachers by trade. So they're not necessarily coming from the industry back to the classroom. So again, they're not necessarily aware of what the newest practices are, what the tools are. Maybe they have equipment that's broken and they don't have anything to fix it and they don't have a budget. So again, connecting post-secondaries like yours to shop classes is also huge because now all of a sudden there's here's what we're using in our program, and here is an additional set of information and knowledge that we can help provide for you. And I think there's a real link to be made between shop class teachers and technical colleges, and then the industry partners that the technical colleges have as well too. If we could bring them all together and loop them together, the impact of that would be monumental.
Awesome. Thanks.
I see we do have one question from one of our lovely Pete's. I think Peter has a question. Are you still with us, Peter?
Yes, actually I am. And it's a good, interesting, it was great to meet you last year, Angela. It was great at the symposium. And just wondering, has there been, some feedback from the students or for the teachers and school boards that you've introduced the program to?
Yeah, so we do survey teachers, and so we survey them 3 times a year. So September before they start the program, and then in February mid-year, and then in May before their year is over. The result is that they say that their kids are really engaged. The activities are fun. They really like the books. They see diversity. They said that it's really nice to be able to showcase diverse careers, and so the feedback has been really, really positive. And we're now doing the same thing in Alberta as well too, getting that same kind of feedback. And then we do the same thing with the events, like yesterday at the technical college, and there as well too, a lot of teachers will walk away saying, I had no idea that these careers were so diverse. I had no idea how to get into them. I didn't realize they were STEM careers. So I would say that overall, I think there's just a real awareness that comes along with it, and teachers really like the fact that it's hands-on, and that they're getting to not just do pencil and paperwork, not just them, but their students. So the feedback's all been really, really positive. And the biggest thing is, how can I get more teachers doing this? That's the question often. How can I get even more materials into my classroom, like more like, wood and things like that? Because that's something that we tend to give materials that teachers can use, and we have a school districts approve. So we do have, hammers, 8-ounce hammers we can give and so on. But I think ultimately they'd like even more things. And that's, and so because they don't have shop classes. So the response has been really positive, and just the desire to continue to grow the program is really what teachers want to do. And then they say they can use everything. A lot of the things are not consumable. So they're like, we can just do it all over again. We replace the consumables. They replace the consumables that are all chosen specifically to be low cost and easily accessible. So then, all of our teachers in Ontario now, they're on year 2 of doing this. So they're just going to, and then they make tweaks and grow the program themselves and add new things in. So it's kind of one of those things where once you give it to them, they kind of just run with it. And that's really what the goal is.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's real good that they, have the experience, and then getting more teachers to know about it, and less academic, but even to show them, oh, this is the building or the whatever technical side of things. And as you say, many different side jobs towards the construction industry exist that don't involve tools, but still contribute to the end of the project. That's good.
Correct.
I don't believe we have any more questions, but I would like to say, Angela, it's amazing how passionate you are about this. Um, you know, I've met you in person, and you literally do light up a room when you're talking about this. And this is the last 2 years is the first time in a long time that I've had real hope that not only will people in the future entering the trades start to look at themselves as a professional, but I'm starting to believe that more and more tradespeople are starting to carry themselves as professionals, and I think the work that you're doing is only going to further that. And I'm looking forward to seeing you do more amazing things to help us ensure that we get a lot more young people and the right people in the trades.
Well, thank you. And I think I think that what you said there is just so true. It's the right people, and it's not that there's one, there's not like there's some kind of identifying factor that we can say like this kind of kid is the person. I think that's been one of the biggest problems, for the kids that maybe were the challenging students or the ones that aren't academically performing. That was where the guidance counselor said, I think you should go into a trade, not realizing that you need maths and sciences to do these jobs. I think it's also on doing that so that, again, the kids who show the talent, the skills, the abilities, the interest, right? Regardless of how you show up in your class, right? Whether you're a really academic kid or you're a kid that is really smart, but just pencil and paper is not the way you show your learning. It's really just making sure all kids realize it's an option. And then if from there, they'll figure out whether it's right for them or not, and making sure there's acceptance there. So that's normalized. And so I agree with you completely. Just let every child realize it exists, and then they can decide if it's the right path for them.
Amazing. Unless anybody has anything else, I think we're at the top of the hour, and it's time to wrap up this episode of BS&BEER Canada. Thank you again, Angela. I would love to have you back, even if it's just for like a mini episode to kind of give an update where you're at. I'm not saying in 6 months, but maybe this time next year. Let's see how things are happening in BC. I really hope that Honor the Work does well there. I have reason to see that this book will be shared in elementary school in BC. So uh, hopefully that happens.
You bet. We're in the works of just figuring out where that right spot is for it and how it matches with the curriculum the best. But yes, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your support, and thank you for your symposium last year. It was fantastic, and just for all the work you're all doing to help change the perception and also, you know, teach the next generation and reach out in your own communities. It's a collaborative team effort, and it requires everybody across the country to be doing, you know, their outreach in whatever way that works for them. So thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you again, Angela. All right. Night, everybody.
Night, everybody. Thank you.